To be honest, is the pod going up? To be honest, sit down, we need to have a talk. Cornelius gon' make a point that the others don't. Them other shows sound the same, come escape the box. Expand your mind, dig into no controversial topics. He ain't scared to keep it real. Tune into this podcast, but don't be in your feelings. We gon' have a laugh, we gon' talk about some pain. Let's talk about the present situation of today. To be honest, is this the podcast? I need to tune it right now.
Yo, what's up, everybody out there? To be honest, land. This is your boy Cornelius, Lindsey, and I am answering questions. Now, Q&As are something I usually do on my Instagram, but today I figured, hey, I'm going to let people from my Instagram ask me questions, and I'm going to answer them on air. How about that? How about it? And I have not taken a look at these questions, and sometimes these questions, I think we need to have a conversation about mental health and social media. It's interesting because I was just reading a study yesterday. What's today? I forget what today is. All my days be running together. But nevertheless, I was just reading a study that was talking about, I think it was Facebook. They were getting ready to run out a kid's version of Facebook or Instagram, whichever one of the two. It was a kid's version of a social media platform. And they decided against it because now the studies are coming out showing that this stuff is detrimental to our overall mental health. It is starting to, the one thing the study was saying, it was saying that little girls were showing, they were showing a deeper degree of self-hatred, after they get on social media because they're looking at other girls, they're looking at people's bodies who don't look like their body, and this girl has this face that they don't have, and so now it was talking about how plastic surgery was now a big thing, that people are starting to get plastic surgery because back in the day, you would think before social media, when a woman thought she was fine, she only had to be as fine as the women she came in contact with. And if you was living in a, little small country podunk town, you thought, Sister Early Mae, she ain't got no big butt. So I got a bigger butt than Sister Early Mae. So you think you the ace boom coon. But then you get on Instagram, you live in a small town, but then you looking at Sister Early Mae. Sister Early Mae ain't got no big butt. But you look at somebody over here, they be like, dang, they got a big butt. I need to go down to Cuba or something like that to get my butt lifted. Then you come back, you got a cement in your behind, and then all of a sudden now we all having a conversation about something we shouldn't be talking about. But nevertheless, this stuff is detrimental. But I brought that up to say, we have some people out there, God got all his kids, and I believe he loves every last one of them. And I also believe that he has some special ones. And so we deal with them. We deal with them. We just deal with them. That's what we do. And we love on them, and we do all those different things. But I'm going to jump into this. So y'all kind of bear with me. All right. First question we're going to get to. Could you expound on visions from God and telling difference between imagination and daydreaming? I think that a lot of times what happens is people, we want so bad to kind of, I don't want to say simplify something that is spiritual, but we want to so bad just begin to understand everything. And when it comes to, I'll say this, when it comes to our own imagination could be brought up by our own environment, by the things that we have looked at, by, the social media you've watched, by the movies that you've watched, by all those different things. Like I would have people come to me and they would say, I believe that God gave me a dream last night that was just for you. And I said, what was it? And they said, you were out in the field and you were running and there were people who were chasing you. And I believe what God is saying. And I said, because you got to test every spirit. And I don't believe that yours is right. What were you watching? What were you watching before you had the dream? What were you watching that night? Oh, I was watching Wrong Turn. There you go. So you were watching something, and now the visual now got into your head, and then you created a picture and a movie based on something that you are already watching. That's why it is important for you to be cautious about what you watch on television. Why? Because they are telling you a vision. People are full of fear right now. Fear, hatred, division, everything else. Why do you think so? Because that's what the news is all about. You see, some of the happiest people don't watch the news. We don't watch the news. I don't watch the news. Now I go in there and I read a couple of stories, I read a couple of articles, and just stay up to date on some things that are happening. But I don't sit down all day long like, oh my goodness, what happened on the news, and trying to flip between Fox and CNN and MSNBC and Newsmax, who telling the truth, who ain't telling the truth, who's the bad guy, who's the right guy, who's the right, who's the left, who's a Democrat, who gives a flying piece of crap. I mean, honestly. But when you talk about your imagination can be a sum total of all these different things that you've now taken into your eyes and through your ears, and now you're beginning to imagine it. That's why it's an old saying that says, it says that you can watching 20 seconds of pornography can stay with you for 20 years. The reason being is because once it gets inside of your mind, now you're going to start creating movies yourself. So most people go back to pornography and things like that because that addiction begins to form because you're going back to chase the last high that you had. You're going back to recreate that same movie that you've already seen countless time again. And then you get to the end of the movie and, after you finish, you're like, oh, I really hate that I watched the movie. I don't ever want to watch that movie again. But now you're so addicted to it because now you keep going back to it. And now you go back to, Jamie Foxx had a song called 3-Letter Word, sex. And he was talking about how he thought about it. He thought about it at church. He thought about it in the movies. He thought about it at home. He thought about it at school. He thought about it everywhere. It was everywhere he went. And that was a part of his, his imagination. I believe that visions that come from God, I believe that they are for our edification, and then they are also for our repentance. It's a vision that God gives us because obviously He wants us to build something, to create something that could be a quote unquote ark that can take us, wherever He wants us to go. And then it can also be a quote unquote ark that could prepare you for whatever judgment that is coming. He's giving you a vision. He's saying, go and prepare the people, tell them my vision, go and prophesy. That's the whole part of prophecy and why, prophecy and things like that are so important. I'm gonna go to the next question though. Help, my marriage is in trouble. Okay. I don't know how to help though, because you didn't ask me a question. I will say this though. I will say this about marriage. I don't know about y'all, but like I've been so, I don't want to use the word discouraged, but here lately I have had, more people who I know, and I don't know, just people who I've also heard about, who've come to me and just have said, I am going to get a divorce. And well, I know everybody has their own reasoning. And if you're listening to this and you've been saying that, I want you to just take a second and just like literally open up your ears and open up your heart and just hear what I'm going to say. Okay. One of the biggest reasons that I'm hearing now while people are getting a divorce, the biggest things that people are saying to me, one of the biggest things people are saying, I'm getting a divorce because I'm not happy. And I want to say this before I get into what I really want to say. I want to say that happiness can be, happiness is not necessarily the best metric for success. I am not happy when I work out, but after I finish working out, I'm extremely happy because I know that what I endured was purposeful for where I'm going. My caution is in this, and I've said this to so many people who are around me. Don't abort what you have now just because you do not see what it could be in the future. You spend 15, 20, 30, or 7 or 5 or 2 or 3 years with a person, and you assume, well, I'm just not happy. And I don't think we spend enough time to really sit down and really reevaluate and really evaluate, why is it? Is it that we assume that we should be happy because the other person should make us happy? Because if so, that's not going to be good happiness, because now your happiness is in the hands of another person. And now that's going to always be dangerous because you're going to be looking for somebody else to constantly make you happy. And that is extremely, extremely, extremely dangerous and extremely, extremely unhealthy. Now, does that mean that you can't get happiness out of your marriage? Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that happiness in itself is a horrible metric to use to say I'm going to end my marriage because I'm not happy. My wife and I, we've walked through incredibly hard times, and we make it no secret. We have a book out called Fighting Together, where where we talk about, those times in which we talked about getting a divorce and we talked about walking away. But one of the things that we always had before us that was much bigger than, the unhappiness or whatever that we're going through in the moment was the fact that we knew that the vision of why God brought us together was much bigger than whatever sense of unhappiness that we had. And that we needed to be adults and learn how to deal with whatever it was that we felt. So if that meant I need to go to counseling, if that means she need to go to counseling, if that means we need to go together, whatever it may be, then we have to do what we have to do in order to make the changes that are necessary in order to have the marriage that we want. And I know you're probably saying, well, that's y'all. Because, my spouse wasn't willing to change, or my spouse wasn't willing to do this. My spouse wasn't willing to do that. I've heard that time and time again. And I want to say this. Unmet expectations will always bring frustration. When we have an expectation for somebody to do something, and A, we do not communicate those expectations well, or B, we're expecting for people to be who they are not, then we will always end up frustrated. I believe that my relationship with my wife, I'll speak for me personally, began to change when I removed the expectations that I had for her, when I removed them completely. And I allowed for her to be who she is. Because we have a tendency that when we get into a relationship, the tendency is that we want to change the person that we're with. We want this person to now become this image of this is who I think you should be. This is who I always thought you to be. Because you know how it is. A lot of times I don't want to generalize here, but more women that I know usually sit around, but when I'm doing premarital, they'll usually sit around and I say, well, what is your ideal, sense of married life? And they will go on and on and on and on and on. Oh my goodness. I've always dreamed about being this woman and coming home, and I have my happy family around me, and oh my goodness. And my husband loves me so much, and he buys me flowers, and he takes me out, and we travel the world, and we're building like big businesses. And we're going to be multimillionaire. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, oh Lord Jesus, she don't know who gonna tell her, who gonna tell her, who gonna tell her. Not to say that none of those things are going to happen, but what I am saying is that in making all those things happen, you may not see those things for the first 20 years because the two of you are still growing. Like for years, I could sit around, I can blame my parents. I wish they would have done this when I was a kid. I wish they would have done this when I was a kid. I wish I would have done this when I was a kid. But as an adult now with small kids, I realized something about my parents. They were trying to figure out life too. Like I'm trying to figure out life. I'm trying to figure out life. Plus, God done gave me some responsibility. Told me to be responsible for these 3 lives. Expecting for me to keep them alive. Me and my wife expecting for us to keep them alive. I mean, the first time we brought Logan home, I'll never forget, I stared at him. Heather and I, we just looked at him. I looked at Heather, I said, now what are we supposed to do? They didn't give us a book, a manual. Now I went to all the father classes. I did all the CPR classes, but I'm like, he can't talk. He can't walk. He can't buy nothing. He can't work. How you gonna eat? But I say this, when you remove all expectations, then you can usually get rid of the frustration. And removing the expectations, it could take some work, but I guarantee you need to reevaluate what you're doing. Because the assumption is that there's possibly somebody else out there who's going to be better and is going to wrap you up and love you and treat you like the king or the queen that you're supposed to be treated, like the king and the queen that you're supposed to be. And you're going to get out there and you're going to find out real quick that the best of what you had is what you abandoned. Now, I've also heard stories of people who came to me and they said, well, I hear what you're saying, but I got into another relationship and guess what happened? It is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And you want to know why oftentimes that is the case? Because the persons you got into a relationship did not have to deal with the old you. Because I guarantee you they didn't marry the person that your ex had. And if they did, they're probably just suppressing the person that your ex had. They're probably able to handle it a little bit better than your ex could. But you can jump from relationship to relationship. The only problem is you're going to continue to show up. So don't sit here and say, well, my spouse don't make me happy or this don't make me happy. No, it could be that your job didn't make you happy. And now you're taking that out on your spouse. It could be that you're in the middle of a pandemic and your mental health is not all that great right now. You probably lost some jobs, probably lost some money, probably lost some stuff. And you're still trying to figure out your life and your marriage ain't working right and y'all fighting. So now you're like, I'm not happy. Of course you're not happy. A lot of people ain't happy right now. We all trying to figure it out. I mean, hey, yeah. Okay, I just spoke in tongues, so I wasn't supposed to say what I'm supposed to say. But nevertheless, just be cautious. I know I took a long time on that, but we're gonna do that. Let me see. Okay, somebody's asking about the about mask. So I put up something on my Instagram, and y'all be responding to it. I'm not saying y'all, but I'm saying, you know, some of your cousins, some of your brothers, some of your sisters. But I put up something that was I had a mask on. I was on the plane, and while on the plane, I put up a Insta story or something like that basically said that I am for facial nudity. And I had people that were hitting me. They were like, well, you know, I can't believe you're talking bad about the mask. You're going to discourage people from wearing masks. You need to wear a mask. You need to do this. You need to do that. I had a very interesting conversation with a buddy of mine who worked down in a mine shaft. And he was talking about all the protective gear that he had to wear while he was down in the mine shaft. And it was extremely important and interesting, because he was talking about how, you know, he was kind of detailing me that this kind of mask and this kind of mask, he was covered up with this. And sometimes he had to go down there, you know, in a whole suit and stuff like that. And he's like, so, and even then he was like, oftentimes that the vapors and the odors would sometimes seep through. And he looked at me and he said, and people actually think that mask is going to work. And I thought to myself, then you also, you know, you look at, you know, the emails and all of the kind of stuff from Fauci and all this kind of stuff, and you begin to wonder. You begin to just ask questions like, you know, is this thing really working? I mean, I hear what people are saying, and I know people always say, you know, trust the science. People say it, trust the science. Trust the science. And then you got people out here who are talking about, well, God made the scientists. I don't know if God made them. I mean, here's the thing. I don't argue with that. I don't doubt God made them. But what I am questioning, and I will always question this, is why is it that we should trust some scientists and not others? Why is it that some scientists are censored? Some scientists are silenced when they bring up opposing information. That's it. Why? I mean, that's my question. That causes me not to trust the institution when I cannot get both sides of the story. Allow for me, as a sensible, responsible citizen, to be able to make my own decision. When we start to mandate things, I mean, when you just start to mandate things, it just gets out of control, which goes to the next thing. Somebody asked me, was I anti-vaccine? I think that too is like, you know, a crazy question. I've said so many times on this podcast that it is okay for you to be and not or. What I mean is that it is very possible somebody to be pro-vaccine, but to be anti-mandate. Now, me personally, I don't get it. I prefer natural stuff. That's how I've always been. And the few times I've actually gone to the doctor, I've been able to count it on my hand. You know, I prefer things that are natural. I'm all for health over healing. You know, even in the church nowadays, like we have to have healing conferences. And if we ever ask the question in church why we have to have healing conferences, I'll tell you why. Because we're extremely unhealthy. That's why. We're extremely unhealthy. Well, I hear what you're saying, Cornelius, that people still got cancer. They do have cancer because of the foods we eat, because of the stress we take on, because of the things that we don't do, because of the exercise we don't have. But it was hereditary. My diabetes was hereditary. Well, so you telling me, and I get it. The gene could have been passed down. But are you telling me that your mama forced you to eat all that sugar when you was a teenager and when you was a young adult? You telling me she was stuffing ice cream and cake down your mouth? I mean, at some point we have to begin to look at ourselves and ask some very real questions, y'all. Like, I get it, man, but I'm one of those guys. I believe in health over healing. I am real big. People tell me all the time, I hate you always talking about working out. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't. I don't understand that. If there's anybody who should be talking about working out, it should be the preacher. Why? because the preacher wants to talk about those things which are disciplines. Like, isn't that the whole point of being a disciple? A disciple was a disciplined one. Thank God Jesus didn't go around saying, this is my overweight disciple. And how does this person gonna be able to walk with him from Samaria to Jerusalem? You can't walk with me, bruh. We can't carry you. If something were to happen, you here by yourself, pimp. Like the cross won't even stay up because it can't hold you up. That's a problem. Does anybody else not see this? Anybody else not see this? You can't see how unhealthy we are. You can't see how much news we consume, how much social media we indulge in, how much crap we take on. I mean, the last time that people have held a hardcover book, people don't even read anymore. I was just reading a study the other day that was talking about how the average person does not read anymore. That now you have to simplify news articles into 1 to 2 statements in order to capture the attention and then to send them to the article. Most people don't go to the article. Why? Because they don't want to read. Instead, we look at the picture and we make an assumption based on the picture. I can't believe they just said that. I can't believe this. But did you even read the article? People do that to me. I'll post something and then they'll go and they'll read what's in the box. You didn't even read the context. You didn't even read what I wrote. Well, and then people, it was too long. It was too long. Are you kidding me? So we don't read anymore. We're not healthy. We get away from natural things like probiotics, zinc, vitamin C. We don't get into vitamins and stuff like that anymore. And gosh, don't even talk about those nowadays. Don't talk about those. We can't talk about eating healthy. We can't talk about, eating right. That's not a discussion nowadays. The kind of water that we consume, we won't get into any of those things. We won't get into any of those things. We're just talking about just trust the science. I'm all for trusting the science. I just want to make sure that we're trusting the right science. And I have a big problem when there is one science that is supported and the other science is silenced. That should be a problem to you. Okay. So, and when it comes down to all these mandates, you got to mandate this and mandate that. I'm asking the question. I'm like, hey, I feel like it's problematic. You're mandating something in which you say if you get it, then it won't necessarily prevent. So, okay, you'll mandate chocolate. Chocolate is not going to prevent you from getting sick. But what they're saying is that if you do get it, then your sickness won't be as bad with chocolate. But we also don't know what the other implications are if you take chocolate. So you can take chocolate, but we don't really have any studies because it hasn't been out long enough to do studies on if you were to take chocolate, then your continuation taking chocolate could have these implications. We don't know that yet. And we're trying to figure that part out too. So I don't shun anybody who chooses to get the vaccine. That is their prerogative. Thank God, I live in what I still know to be a free country. Don't know how long that's gonna last. But I see that. And then I look at, and if you say, well, I don't want to get one, I don't hold that against you either. As somebody who said to me, they was like, well, you talking about the mask, but the virus is very real. AIDS is very real too, but I don't walk around with a condom on my penis all day long. I mean, come on. I mean, a lot of things are very real, but okay. So I do that. I got to, the Holy Spirit, he just kind of draws me back in, but we just, oh, Father, be offense. But I've spent so much time on my podcast, talking about those things. And I pray that, people just get an open ear to hear it. Again, if you've gotten the vaccine, I'm not putting you down because you've gotten it. If you haven't gotten it, I'm definitely not putting you down for not getting it. And I feel like that should be something that is a common sentiment amongst all people. I said something a couple weeks ago in which, I had people who vilified me for it. I was like, well, it's the same argument as abortion. You bring up abortion nowadays and people say, well, you should give this woman a choice. Okay, well, Well, if that's the case, if it is her body and her choice on whether or not she wants to do anything with the living, breathing person inside of her womb, then it should be the same way for the people who say, well, I don't want to get vaccinated. They're saying, I don't want that in me. Now, if we were to bring out a mandate that said that, you couldn't get an abortion and that, you couldn't have, I mean, you look at what happened in Texas. Texas passed a law which said that, they're pretty much couldn't get there were no more abortions. People went crazy. I can't believe this. You need to make sure this is their body. This is their choice. This is their thing. But then you mandate a jab, and you mandate people, companies who have over 100 employees, and you mandate for them to make sure they get chocolate. And you're sitting there, you're wondering, like, well, why they got to get chocolate? Why? How is this fair? Then they say, well, you need to love your brother, love your neighbor. That's what the Bible says. I cannot stand when people take the word of God and then they continue to flip it. That is not what Jesus was talking about. Jesus wasn't talking about taking chocolate. That's not what he was talking about. He didn't have that on his mind. That's how you love your brother. How am I loving my brother? So if you don't take your vitamins and I take my vitamins won't work. No, my vitamins going to work because my vitamins are in my body. Whether or not you took your vitamins or not, that's on you. In fact, I took my vitamins in expectation that you didn't take yours. So just in case if something on you, I make sure I already got my vitamins and it's already in me. That's like, it's always been common sense. I don't get it. I don't understand. I feel like it's something that's bigger that's going on. We don't really know what it is. We're going to figure out what it is. And then everybody's going to be like, oh my goodness, I wish somebody would have told me. We tried. And unfortunately, vaccine passports and vaccine mandates, I mean, in Black Lives Matter, and I believe it's in New York City, they came out and, agree with this. I was shocked, but they came out and they said, listen, the vaccine passports in New York City, they are going to oppress more Black folks. And you say, well, that just means that Black people need to get vaccinated, turning them into second-class citizens. And, and nowadays, restaurants, stuff like that won't let people come in unless you're vaccinated, unless you show your vaccine card. Or if not, you have to get your food to go. You got to, what are we doing now? We're doing like a backdoor deal. Like, come to the back door, grab your food, and we'll hand it out to you in the back. Why don't you just put a whites only sign up in the front? Hey, let's turn the clock the whole way, bruh. I just don't. It was interesting. I was walking to a grocery store. I live in California. I was walking to a grocery store, and there was a sign that said, "We hold the right to discriminate." And I thought to myself, yo, we're in 2021 and nobody's protesting this. We hold the right to discriminate. Now, I could only imagine, I'm just throwing out a thing here. I can only imagine if that said, I hold the right to discriminate against, LGBTQ, against this, against Blacks, if I hold the right to discriminate against these people, I wonder how long that store would stay in business. But since the store was specifically talking about those people who are unvaccinated or people who refuse to wear masks, then it's just okay. And it's just fine. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this is problematic. Nobody else sees a problem with this. I am to say that I'm like disturbed by this. And, I want to have faith. I want to have faith in my government. That's not to say that my faith is fully in my government, but I am saying I do. I want to have faith. I want to have faith in my government. And honestly, I couldn't honestly say that I have faith in them right now. And that's pretty troubling. Nevertheless, let me answer one more question, and then I am going to let you go. You talk a lot about depression. Why? I talk about it because I believe that it needs to be a part of our society for our worldwide conversation. I remember growing up, and I remember seeing leaders on the stage preaching great orators, Dr. King. I remember watching many speeches. I wasn't alive at the time of some of them, but I remember watching speeches from Barbara Jordan out of Texas. I remember, listening to men like Zell Miller when he stood and he gave the address. He was a Democrat at the time, but he gave the address at the Republican National Convention when they were nominating George W. Bush, for the second time for a second term. I remember going back and watching speeches by John F. Kennedy. I remember, Margaret Thatcher. I remember watching these speeches and watching these men and these women, wondering to myself, where did their strength come from? And there was a book that I read. I can't even think of the name of it now. But, I can't think of the name of it now. I wish I had the name of it. But anyway, it talked about a lot of those great orators. And one of the things that it talks about is it's called a first rate madness, or first class madness, or something like that. But it talks about a lot of those leaders, Abraham Lincoln, people like that, and it talks about how many of them suffered from depression. Like, Dr. King suffered from depression, but if he jumped out of a second story window at one point. Suffer from depression, anxiety, all those different things. You can only imagine being a leader at the height of the civil rights movement, with people who are threatening not only your life, but also your family's life. You have a wife and you have kids. You have 4 kids at home. And with me, I have a wife and I have 3 kids at home. And I can only imagine the type of stress and anxiety and things that are going inside of him because of the potential of what could happen. So I remember watching that. And reading that, and I remember thinking to myself, like, man, these men here dealt with something that was so real. And these women dealt with something that was so real as leaders, but you would have never known it because that wasn't something they necessarily talked about. Dr. King, he didn't have time to talk about his depression because it was about the civil rights movement. It was about this peaceful, this nonviolent protest, helping the sanitation worker, helping the sanitation worker, helping the post office, the postal workers, making sure that we could always, as Black folk, we can always have the right to vote. That was something he devoted his life to. But in giving of yourself and giving of your life, you also lose a part of yourself. You also lose a part of your life. And I think that we need to have a bigger discussion about depression. We'd have a bigger discussion about soul care, because I don't feel like we're taking care of ourselves. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, we consume all the wrong things. We consume junk, we consume processed sugar. And you may say, I get so tired of you talking about food, but the only reason why I bring that up is because it correlates with your mental. Because sugar becomes addictive. That's the reason why you can't stay away from it. That's the reason why you always, after you eat, I got a sugar tooth. Ooh, I'm tasting me some donuts right now. That's addiction. That's it. That's an addiction. And in the church, we'll be quick to talk about the crackhead. They addicted to crack. We'll be addicted. We'll quickly, see somebody get up on the stage. You're giving a testimony and say, I've been addicted to marijuana for 12 years or whatever it was. Or I've been on marijuana for 12 years. Maybe not addicted to it, but I've been smoking marijuana for 12 years. And then people will sit there with their overweight selves in the front row judging them like, I can't believe they were addicted to marijuana. Yeah, and you addicted to honey buns. You know what I'm talking about? We don't think about that. But look at our sugar intake. I mean, have you seen the size of people nowadays? And I'm not even like fat shaming. I'm doing my best to show you that we're addicted to all the wrong things. We're addicted to television. People watch way too much television. We watch way too much television. We don't read anymore. So we're not as educated. Isn't it something that we live in such a technical world where all the information we really want is at our fingertips, whether it is true or it is false, it is at our fingertips. And even with the information being at our fingertips, we're still ignorant on so many things. We don't read anymore. I mean, you can forget about exercising. I mean, people are scared to go outside now. We don't get vitamin D. We don't go out. We don't sit in the sun. We sit under, the light. And oftentimes in offices, you sit under this infrared light or whatever it is that they got in the offices, and you leave from that, and then you walk through the garage and you get in your car and you drive in your car, and then you go inside of your house and you sit there in your house and you sit in front of the TV, and the television tells you a vision. And then you leave out and then you go back to your job and you sit there with your coworkers and you talk about the vision that the TV told you. That's it. That's it. And then you call everybody else crazy because they don't necessarily believe the vision because they're not watching the television. And we're just not healthy. I also talk about my journey of depression because I want people to know that it's real. I want people to know that you don't have to be ashamed of it. I want people to know that you don't have to hide it. And I want people to know that there's a way that you can overcome it. Now, there was a time in my life where I thought I was going to be that way forever. I didn't think there was ever be a way that I was not going to be depressed. I thought this is something I'm going to have to live with. I'm just going to have to deal with it and just keep moving. And it's unfortunate. But I hate that I felt that way, but it was extremely real. And I want people to know, especially my leaders out there, I want leaders to know that although this is how you feel, that this is only a chapter of your story and it's not your whole story. You can keep moving, you can keep going, and it's going to get better. I just know it is. So that's why I do it. But nevertheless, I've been with y'all for over 30 minutes right now, so I'm going to call it a day. Maybe we can do this again later on. Maybe I can screenshot some of the questions and I can answer some more next week. If that's on the schedule. But y'all, I love y'all so much. If this show does anything for you, if it helps you out at all, make sure that you help me out. Make sure you share it with somebody. Just text a link to like 3 or 4 people. Let them watch it. It's on my YouTube channel as well. Cornelius Lindsey. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple or Google, whatever it may be, whatever place you listen to it on, go over to my YouTube. You can actually see my face, like shining on here. You can see my face on there, and I really appreciate y'all rocking with me. I appreciate y'all just always being there and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. But I love y'all so much. God bless y'all. Intro deuces. I'm out.